despite not being the favorite, guys like Luke Lilledahl and Braeden Davis can absolutely win a Big Ten title, but it depends on what path they have to go through.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, and I am joined by the voice of Penn State Wrestling, morning show host over at 98.7 The Fox Sports Radio affiliate in State College. Jeff Byers is joining me for part one and part two for a Big Ten tournament preview series where we go through each individual weight class to talk about each Penn State wrestler's path. So this is part one. So we're going to go through 125 all the way through 157. And the pre-seeds aren't out just yet, but we have a good idea of where everyone can end up. And we'll go through every single detail there is starting at 125. Before we go any further, let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Please leave a like on this episode. And if you're not already, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around Penn State wrestling. Jeff, Luke Lilledahl, I think, is the second best wrestler objectively in this 125 bracket for the Big Ten tournament. Matt Ramos is the, clear-cut number one wrestler. He's undefeated in Big Ten conference action. He's undefeated overall in the season here. But depending on where Luke Lilledahl ends up, I think if and when Lilledahl and Ramos meet, that is going to be the best match out of the entire 125 bracket.
It'll be intriguing for sure. And listen, Luke Lilledahl is certainly capable of beating anybody out there. And, there's probably 3 or 4 guys in this tournament that are capable of beating Lilledahl on a given day. I just, it's one of those things, Zach, where it's more of a gut feeling than anything else. Although I think with the exception, McCrone caught him and did a great job of catching him and set it up. I mean, catching is probably understating what McCrone did. I mean, he worked for that and got the cradle locked up. So all credit to McCrone. I mean, it was a really great strategy and it was brilliantly executed in the dual meet. I think with the exception of that, of getting caught there, that this probably last month of the season, we have seen Lilledahl just catch another gear. And I really think he is one of those guys that is going into the tournament. I mean, you're obviously hoping all of your kids are in that position where they're going in wrestling their best of the season. I just think for the younger kids, you see it often with Penn State and really with a lot of other teams too, where the lessons that you learn during that dual meet season, this is where they pay off. Now, you need to have a strong baseline of talent, which Luke Lilledahl has.
That helps.
To be able to use that use those lessons and get the optimal results. I just think Luke Lilledahl goes in with a ton of steam. And I think with the way he's wrestling right now, regardless of where you seed him, in my mind, Lilledahl is kind of the guy to beat here. I just think he's wrestling at a really high level. I think he knows what he's capable of doing, and he has a really good feel now for what it takes to compete at the highest level here in the college ranks.
Braeden Davis did this a season ago, where he was a true freshman at 125 and ultimately won a Big Ten tournament and was able to use that to be the number one seed at the NCAA tournament. This is a crowded 125 class. Ramos is here in the Big Ten, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but this is a solid, the top 4, I think, are genuinely guys that are, at the very least, all going to be on the podium between Ramos, between Dean Peterson, between Luke Lilledahl, who we're specifically talking about, and Caleb Smith. Jeff, the path, though, can be more or less ideal depending on where he is ultimately seated. So I know that Penn State and Cale Sanderson probably would say something along the lines of, we don't care, where we wrestle, we don't care where we're seated. But facing a Matt Ramos hypothetically in the semifinal versus the championship can really help or hurt Lilledahl depending on what happens. Is it safe to say that he's most likely going to be the 4 seed because of that loss to Dean Peterson and ultimately getting pinned by Brendan McCrone?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pin by McCrone is what knocks him down to the 4 seed. To me, he's kind of locked in as the 4 seed. I'll be very surprised and scratching my head if he's seated anywhere else. And honestly, in this particular case, I don't know that it much matters, Zach, because as you said, those top 4 guys, there's not a lot of separation there one way or the other. And so you're going to face, presuming they all take care of business, you're going to face 2 of those guys in the semifinals and finals. I don't know that it particularly matters what order you face them. And I'm not sure, there's some thought that there's an edge to seeing somebody earlier in the season and being able to make adjustments. In this particular case, I'm not sure that it isn't an advantage to Lilledahl for Ramos to not have had the feel of him earlier in the season. And I think Lilledahl has enough experience under his belt collegiately, but also prior to that internationally, that I just don't know that there's anything there that is going to be terribly shocking, and probably the same case with Ramos with Lilledahl. But I think the way Lilledahl has improved and some of the little wrinkles that he's adding to his game, to me, this is an opportunity for that to pay off. And listen, if he does lose once or a couple of times here at Big Tens, the nice thing is you have a couple of weeks to go back, make those corrections, and finish even higher when the NCAAs roll around.
Somebody who did win a Big Ten title, as I referred to earlier, is we're going to jump. We got to go through these weight classes one by one. We get to 133 where Braeden Davis moves up. And hearing from Cale Sanderson at his media availability this week that Davis seems to be at his healthiest, that he is, quote, ready to roll going into the Big Ten tournament. So really no question marks about his availability, that he will wrestle. He's going to look as his best self. And that gives me a lot of confidence in a 133 because the margin of where he's seated, Jeff, is really up for debate. It could be as high as 4, or it could be as, I guess, prestigious as the 4 seed, or potentially as low as the 6 seed. I mean, maybe even the 3 seed. He just doesn't have a lot of matches to go off of because he hasn't wrestled, but the resume is solid. Nick Bazakis, Dylan Shaver, when he is not at his best, he's defeating All-America level type of talent. But then you have the Jacob Van D loss, which certainly will hurt him. And then Lucas Bird, I don't know that necessarily takes him down a whole lot, but it's really the Jacob Van D, kind of similar to Brendan McCrone, where Davis could end up being seeded. But again, at the end of the day, I don't know that it matters from Penn State's perspective, but it does matter in terms of the path because, well, I guess regardless of the path, one way or another, you're facing Drake Ayala or Lucas Bird at the end of the day. So there really is no favorable path at 133.
Yeah, and listen, I think I think a well-rested, ready to go Braeden Davis, as we saw last year in the Big Ten tournament, is dangerous. Now, I do think, going into this thing, Drake Ayala and Lucas Bird are the 2 guys to beat. To me, we'll see how it shakes out. To me, Davis is a pretty clear 4 seed at this weight with his conference resume and then overall resume. I guess you could make an argument. I don't think it's a strong one that he could drop him down to a 5 seed, but and really the difference between 4 or 5, you're going to be facing
not
the
much
other guy there, and you're still getting the 1 seed in the semifinals. To be honest with you, I think that he matches up better with Ayala than he does Bird, which isn't to say I don't think he can. He's certainly capable of, again, beating anybody in the weight class. But I think being the 4 or the 5 seed is perfectly fine for Braeden Davis. And as you said, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to take out Ayala and or Bird. And I think doesn't necessarily much matter what order you're facing them in, presuming that is who you'll face. And I am presuming that. And so, again, I think Braeden Davis is right there, whether or not, he can get over the hump in the Big Ten tournament against these two, or get over the hump at the NCAAs against these two. Well, that's why they're going to go out and wrestle. But I think he has a lot of confidence that he can do it. I think having the feel earlier in the year with Bird and knowing he wasn't quite 100% for that one is probably not a bad thing. Drake Ayala is obviously a terrific wrestler and a very strong contender here to win the national title. I just think Braeden, again, in a given match, is certainly capable of being right there and finding a way to get the win. So I think, to me, those three guys, and it's Braxton Brown is certainly a terrific wrestler as well, and Dylan Shaver. I mean, Van D obviously put together a great match against Davis out in Lincoln. But to me, going into this, I'm expecting one of those three to end up on top of the podium, either Ayala, Bird, or Davis.
I do think Davis, if we're talking objectively, I think anybody can win on any given day, but that does hold true here. I think Davis, when he is at his best, people just need a friendly reminder that Davis isn't really a weak link in all of this. This is a solid 133-pound class, but again, Davis going out there, give or take, I'd say 75% when he resumed action there towards the latter part of the season, where he did take out Nick Bouzakis, and that's his first action back, and he goes and beats a Bouzakis. He is able to defeat Dylan Shaver along the way. Lucas Bird is Lucas Bird. That's a national title contender, so if you are not 100%, you already have an uphill battle as it is. So if Kale is being genuine and being honest, which I imagine he is, then Davis has just as much of a legitimate case to win this time around as Ayala and as Bird if he's 100% or pretty close to it, 99.
Yeah, and listen, I do think this weight class is at least in my mind, probably as open as any, which isn't to say that Ayala and Bird won't be in the finals as most are projecting, but I do think there are more dangerous wrestlers here that can pose a threat and get a hot tournament, whether it's here at Big Tens or at the NCAAs, that could disrupt things. And, a Bouzakis and a Shaver and certainly a Braeden Davis are guys capable of doing that. And even Jacob Van D. I mean, for whatever reason, he just seems to have the magic at home. Obviously, neither of these events will be at Nebraska, so we'll see if he can figure out how to take that on the road with him. But, he's wrestled some terrific matches this year. So I do think that this weight class probably warrants watching closely, because if there are upsets, to me, 133 is a pretty likely candidate to see them.
Once again, Beau Bartlett should and will have the number one seed locked up, but will it be a reverse of last year, or will it be a repeat of history and the case for Shayne Van Ness to hold on to the number one seed? We'll talk about that next, coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts, that is right, 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast and from coast to coast. Do you need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. So you'll always talk to a real person, and for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, you can use our promo code SH5, the letters SH and the number 5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. 141 is shaping up to be deja vu all over again. There's just no real woods this time around, but it's Beau Bartlett and it's Jesse Mendez on a crash course at that 141-pound weight class. And I tried to play a little bit of devil's advocate in my initial predictions for the pre-seeds that maybe because of precedent and Jesse Mendez won 2 other times against Beau Bartlett in the postseason last season, that maybe Mendez, but we're talking about this season because I've seen that precedent used for Ridge Lovett. So when we talk about 149, that conversation's going to get interesting, but Bartlett should be the number 1 seed. He was last season because he defeated Mendez in the regular season, but here we are again. Is it deja vu? Or is Bartlett able to reverse course and change history here? Of course, I don't want to neglect some of the other competition because Brock Hardy and Vance Von Bauer kind of create this similar top 4 where, yes, it's top heavy with Bartlett and Mendez, kind of like 125 where it's top heavy with Ramos, but don't count out Brock Hardy from Nebraska and Von Bauer from Minnesota.
Yeah, Hardy in particular, I think is just a special talent and worth keeping an eye on. But yeah, I do think it'll be Bartlett and Mendez, and I think like every time they meet, it's a coin flip out. Somebody's going to win by 2 or 3 points, and who it is on that given day, who knows? It's just going to be whoever hits the move and gets the advantage, and then whether the other can fight them off, his opponent at the end. I just think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the match. And again, I truly think it's a toss-up every time they meet. I think if they do meet in the finals here, somebody's going to win a very close, hard-fought match. And then if they meet at the NCAAs, it's not going to be I don't believe based on, all right, well, this is what happened in the Big Ten, so therefore this is going to happen in NCAAs. I just think every time those two get out on the mat, it's a coin flip match, and you just sit back and watch it and enjoy it if you're a fan, because those two, along with Andrew Liras of Northern Colorado, are just really special elite athletes.
And that's why the number 1 seed is going to be so important, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but at NCAAs as well, because you just create a more favorable path. That's why seeding is so necessary, because we talk about, I mentioned Brock Hardy and Vance Von Bauer. Von Bauer's talented, but you said, well, it's Brock Hardy's in a category by himself, and Beau Bartlett wouldn't necessarily have to face him as the 1 seed until that hypothetical championship. So that means that Jesse Mendez has some more heavy lifting to do if he wants to even get a rematch with Bartlett. And we've seen how close Bartlett and Hardy have been just over the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, and I do think this is one where you really do want to be the 1 seed at the NCAA tournament, as you said, just because you don't want to have to face 2 of the 3, and obviously 2 of the guys are going to. I think it's just about a given that it'll be the winner of this Bartlett-Mendez bout is the 1 seed, the loser is the 2 seed, and Liras will be the 3 seed. So, yeah, I do think this Big Ten title bout matters just because you'd rather just face one of those other 2 elite guys and not both to get a title. And that's not to say Beau Bartlett or Jesse Mendez isn't capable of beating both the Liras and then the other. But your preference certainly would be, yeah, give me just one opportunity at one of those guys, and let's go take our chances.
Now, what is the difference this time around? Because like I said, the timeline is almost completely identical here, where Beau wins in the regular season. It's close, but he wins. And then gets to the Big Ten title, loses. It's a close one, and it's the exact same. How do you make sure that you don't repeat history if you're Beau, and if you're Jesse, how do you do that to where you had the blueprint and apply it this time again, this next time?
Well, listen, I think that's going to be one of the more fascinating parts about this Big Ten finals, presuming that they do get there, is what adjustments does Mendez make from the dual meeting, and what adjustments does Beau Bartlett make based on the feel he had there, and with the Penn State coaches going into this, and then again, what adjustments are made then again in a couple of weeks at NCAAs, regardless of the outcome. Again, to me, you have two elite guys. If they wrestled 20 times, I really think they'd go 10-10. Maybe one would go 11-9. But there's not much separating these two. And I think, it's going to take a special effort by either one of them to come out on top. And again, to me, the winner in this is just wrestling fans, because I think there's going to be some really, really special wrestling if I think when these two meet in the finals on Sunday.
149 is similar in regard to where you want to be the 1 seed, because then it just like I said, it's just a more favorable path, and you don't have to do as much heavy lifting, where there's a serious power struggle here, and it is debatable. Because everybody traded a win. Ridge Lovett defeated Shayne Van Ness, then Shayne Van Ness defeated Kyle Parko, and then Kyle Parko defeated Ridge Lovett. So nobody really holds a tiebreaker here per se, because I've seen the argument that, well, Ridge Lovett should be the number 1 seed because he is the defending Big Ten champion at 149. At the end of the day, Shayne Van Ness has the better overall record. I know this is the Big Ten tournament, but something's got to give in terms of the criteria to decide who is the 1, 2, or 3. So, Jeff, what is the case? I think that's enough to get Shayne Van Ness the number 1 seed here, but what is the case for Shayne Van Ness to get the 1 seed, or do you think it should be somebody else?
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. My guess is Lovett will be the 1 seed, and I don't really have a big problem with it. Again, he won the head-to-head meeting there with Van Ness, and I know, Parko can sit and turn around and say, well, listen, I only have 1 conference loss also, and I beat Lovett. So, all 3 certainly have a case to be made. I think at the end of the day, Lovett gets the nod. And again, I don't know that it much matters. And in this particular case, I'm not even sure. And listen, all of these guys want to go out and win Big Ten titles, so I'm not saying that's irrelevant. In terms of the seeding and how this shakes out at NCAAs, though, I really don't know that it matters who finishes first, second, third here. I think all 3 of these guys are going to be right in the mix when the NCAA tournament rolls around in a couple more weeks. So, again, I think just some really good wrestling is on tap. Yes, again, you'd rather not have to face 2 of these guys. I'm not sure when you get in these situations, and you have the round robin results that you do, it's virtually a coin flip, and really Lovett being the returning Big Ten champion makes as much sense as anything else, because again, somehow you got to seed these guys 1, 2, and 3. I guess I'm expecting Lovett to be the 1 seed, and I think Van Ness will be the 2 seed then, and Parko the 3 seed, but we'll see how it shakes out. Again, regardless, I don't think from Van Ness's perspective, I really don't think it much matters. You got to get through a meat grinder of a weight class here, both at Big Tens and certainly at NCAAs, and I think, in some ways, you'd almost rather get the preparation here at Big Tens facing these guys, regardless of result, so that you're a little more tested and ready to go when the NCAAs roll around.
To speak on behalf of Kyle Parko, I mean, that's crazy to me that you defeat the number 1 seed in the regular season and no good deed shall go unpunished, I suppose, as you end up with the 3 seed there in Parko's case, because you did lose to Shayne Van Ness. So it's a weird process to come to that conclusion, but so be it. Jeff, Dylan D'Amelio gave Shayne Van Ness, and I think it's fair to group him in with these 3. I know this is the debate because they have the closest, at least proximity to that number 1 seed, but Dylan D'Amelio, Shayne Van Ness did a heck of a job of fending off every single one of his shots in that Penn State-Ohio State dual meet, but I absolutely think that Dylan D'Amelio could mess things up, and I don't know if he's going to be the 4 seed and Shayne Van Ness is hypothetically the 1 seed. I don't know that you want to face D'Amelio in this Big Ten tournament at 149. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no, he's a terrific wrestler and certainly has all 3 of these guys, I'm sure, now well scouted and is well prepared for the potential matchups. And yeah, I think that's a great point. And D'Amelio is, I think he's a fun wrestler to watch. He's got a lot of different elements that he can bring to the mat. And so, yeah, it probably really is a four-man race here at 149. And, obviously when you get to nationals, those four, and then you throw in obviously Caleb Henson and then some others into the mix. And I think it's just going to be a fun weight class again to watch throughout the postseason.
This is just part one of a part two series talking about this Big Ten tournament. Tyler Kasak won't be the number one seed, it sounds like. And for someone that's the number one wrestler overall in the coaches' rankings, any other list that you look at ranking these individual wrestlers, but he'll be the 2 seed at 157 when the Big Tens roll around. We'll talk about why on the other side of this break. Tyler Kasak is the number one overall wrestler, but because we're talking about Big Ten results, there's a subjective element to it, but there really is the overarching objective element to it. And when you look at this, Tyler Kasak did in fact lose to Ethan Miller. Shout out to Ethan Miller. Credit to him. I'm not talking about the individual bout, no, because he didn't actually win that one, even though he did. It wasn't a true victory in terms of moral victories, right? Concussion protocol injury. But I think it's impressive for Ethan Miller in a Big Ten conference slate to go undefeated like this. So let Kasak and Miller settle it at the end of the day. But because when you injure, I look at it this way, Jeff, when you injury default, if you happen to do that at Big Tens, at NCAAs, that's a loss. We saw that with Carter Starachi when he willingly forfeited completely different circumstances. But my point being is that if you go out there and you are required to injury default, you don't get a do-over. Well, we'll just do the match later. It's a loss at the end of the day. It's unfortunate. The circumstances are what they are, but that's why Tyler Kasak will be the number 2 seed, because technically Ethan Miller gets that win because of the injury default when they wrestled head to head.
Yeah, and really, I mean, it's pretty clear-cut. Miller being undefeated in Big Ten action, I think will and should be the 1 seed. And again, I don't think it's any skin off Tyler Kasak's nose. He'll be ready to go. And again, this is another one where the semifinals are not going to be easy no matter who you're matched up against. Antrell Taylor is a terrific talent. And really dangerous for Nebraska. And obviously, Ja'Cory Teamer being a 4 seed. I mean, this is a guy that was
most likely,
in the country earlier in the season as well. So, and is certainly a legitimate title contender here at 157. So, again, I don't know that the seedings really much matter here with those 4 guys. And there's some others that are probably in the mix here at 157 as well. But, again, you can put them in a hat, shake them up, and I don't know that there's any significant advantage style-wise for one over the other or anything like that. You got to beat, 2 of those guys to get a Big Ten title. And, I think Tyler Kasak, well, I know Tyler Kasak has the mindset that, just put whoever you want in front of me and I'll go take care of business.
That seems to be the mentality across the board, especially talking to Mitchell Messenbrink during media availability. And you're right. I don't know that Tyler Kasak and Ethan Miller of Maryland will even get to settle this in the championship. And Tyler Kasak's going to have a tough matchup against an Antrell Taylor, who he did defeat, but again, you get to take notes on a wrestler when you meet them the last time, and you get to make some adjustments, especially when you're on the losing end. You at least have some advantage to get your revenge because you know what you did wrong, and sometimes it's the losses that will teach you the most here. But Kasak wouldn't necessarily have to face. I think Kasak and Ja'Cory Teamer are the best of the 2 in this weight class at 157. I know that Ethan Miller went undefeated, and like I said, that he deserves a lot of credit for that. But I imagine if him and Kasak finished that head-to-head matchup, that Kasak would have came out on top. So at the end of the day, I think Ethan Miller is going to be a little overrated and a little vulnerable as this number 1 seed. And I think that he potentially could lose to the likes of maybe, who knows if Tommy Askey pulls off the upset against Ja'Cory Teamer and is able to make his way through. There are some serious dark horses in this 157-pound class that are after Kasak that could meet him in the championship, that at the end of the day is not Ethan Miller.
Yeah, and again, I Kasak just is one of those guys who I don't know that it much matters. You can put different styles out there, different experience levels, all of that in front of him, and he's just going to go out and impose his will as best he can in every match. And I just think he has that winning mentality of he almost wants to be challenged more, and so I think the greater the obstacle you put in front of him, the more he's going to rise to the occasion and deliver for Penn State.
And remember, this is where he started to, really materialize as a strong wrestler. Finished third at 149 a season ago at Big Tens, and then went on that wrestleback run all the way at NCAAs, defeating Ridge Lovett along the way as well. So this is where we get the best wrestling from Tyler Kasak. So he is by and far my favorite to win at 157, and he defeated a Ja'Cory Teamer decisively, defeated an Antrell Taylor decisively. Not saying those guys, again, can't revitalize themselves, take notes, and make adjustments, but I still think Kasak is still at the best of the best. And in the scheme of things, at the end of the day, a concussion protocol is very serious, but he's not having to, necessarily, okay, I can't step this way or my ankle's going to get hurt, or if I happen to get my knee twisted this way, that I might come up limping, and then I'm not as close to 100% as I would like to be. I think that's where just the injuries that other wrestlers have dealt with aren't necessarily as difficult to overcome for Tyler Kasak in this case.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, and a lot of it has to do with your confidence level in whatever injury you have, and whether you believe that you can go out and compete with it. And certainly Tyler has all the confidence in the world that he's going to be able to go out and do what he wants to do here.
And then just the Big Ten tournament overall, Penn State, of course, should be the team favorite. They won a year ago, but the competition's going to look a little different. I think Iowa's obviously going to take second, and we'll talk about this more in the part 2 of this to wrap up, but Penn State should be considered the favorite as a team, and then Iowa, and then Nebraska, and then maybe Ohio State is able to upset the apple cart a little differently. But when you look at it from a season ago, where it was Penn State, Michigan, Nebraska, and Iowa as fourth, that's going to change here this time around.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State is a clear-cut favorite, and Iowa is certainly favored to place second. I will say, I think Nebraska, Ohio State, and Minnesota are all capable here of getting on a run and making some noise here at the Big Ten tournament, and for that matter, at the NCAA championships as well. I think those three teams are really good and well positioned to make a run. They're going to have some guys step up in terms of NCAAs to get a top 4 finish there. But I think all three of those teams have that capability. Certainly Nebraska going in, I think you would say has had a little more consistent firepower in its lineup. But I've been really impressed with Minnesota and their kind of rebuild job there. And Ohio State is just a really, really solid program.
That's going to do it for part 1 of 2 parts for this Big Ten tournament preview. He is the voice of Penn State Wrestling. That is Jeff Byers. He's also the morning show host of 98.7 The Fox In-State College, Fox Sports Radio affiliate. Links to his work outside of wrestling coverage will be down in the description. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for checking out, again, part 1 of this 2-part series. Part 2 will be down in the description. I encourage you to go check that out, as we're going to pick this conversation right back up with 165 all the way through heavyweight. Jeff, thanks for the time, and I'll be talking to you very soon here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Zach.
And again, thank you so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you're new to the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section, and please leave a like on this episode and share it with friends and family. Above all else, thank you for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On College Basketball with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Become a college basketball expert now, as it is March, so the madness will begin. Find Locked On College Basketball available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day.